What is your relationship with money? I know that kind of sounds strange, but money often affects our decision making, and we need to have a healthy money mindset. What drives your purchases? What causes you to invest in some things and say no to others? If you're someone with a big student loan debt, like many of us, do you feel crippled about making a big financial decision, such as buying a new car or even buying a house? Here to help with this is a physician money and life coach. He is an ophthalmologist who often counsels physicians on these difficult matters. Let's talk about the psychology of money with Dr. Elisa Chiang on this episode of Bootstrap MD. Hey guys, this is Dr. Mike Ming. Welcome to another edition of Bootstrap MD. From time to time, we love to highlight physician coaches who are in the trenches, helping our fellow doctors. And our next guest is someone that I got to finally get out, post-COVID. I started going to conferences again. And we met at a conference at the White Coat Investor conference in Phoenix. And she's actually one of our physician coaches in our physiciancoaches.com site. And she's a really interesting backstory that I wanted to share with you. And I think you'll be really inspired by her story. She's a life and money coach. She's also an ophthalmologist. She is an oculoplastic surgeon. And she decided she wanted to become a coach to help physicians to help master their money mindset so they can build wealth and practice medicine on their own terms. That's what we all want. She's a certified coach through the Life Coach School, and she offers one-on-one coaching on overcoming burnout, achieving new goals, understanding personal finance, and overcoming the mind blocks towards investing, which I know there's a lot of us out there. We have these blocks that prevent us from investing in things. And you have to be ready to take a leap on those things. And she's going to teach us how she was able to overcome that. I want to welcome to the program Dr. Elisa Chiang. How are you doing, Elisa?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Did I totally butcher your name or did I get close to it?
No, you did a great job.
So I want to talk about your journey because I think it's always fascinating. There are some people who are listening to this who are coaches already. Most of them are thinking about hiring coaches. And some are, just say maybe coaches isn't right for me, but they want to know more. So tell us about your story. How did you journey from being an ophthalmologist to becoming a coach and doing both things?
Yeah, so I was working at a big hospital system, the only level 1 trauma center in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was on call 24/7 as the only oculoplastic specialist, which I had agreed upon when I accepted the job. But the way my supervisor wanted me to take call was not something we kind of agreed upon. So not to get into all the details, but essentially,
it's funny how that happens a lot.
I know discussions that happen before you sign become totally forgotten, right?
Yes.
You got to get it all in writing. So for me, it wasn't really about the hours working that gave me burnout. It was really the complete loss of autonomy and, make decisions and just have control over life. Like I would spend a day just waiting to go to the OR and getting bumped case after case because, something that's affecting your eye or orbit doesn't take, a gunshot would obviously takes precedence over, vision. Vision's very important, but life is, more important. And there'd be days where I'd just be waiting to try to go to the OR and just get bumped after case after case. And yeah, that was not how I wanted to continue spending my time. So the pandemic was actually kind of a blessing because it actually gave me more time off to kind of think and figure out what I really wanted. And it's also that time where I discovered coaching. The Leverage and Growth Summit, Sunny Smith spoke at it. That was hosted by Peter Kim. And I've been following Peter Kim for a long time. So that was when I first heard about coaching. And Sunny Smith had trained at the Life Coach School. So I started listening to the Life Coach School podcast, really just got hooked. I binged it, joined Self-Coaching Scholars. And when the coach certification came up in September, I thought, well, I'm not traveling, which is probably the biggest use of my income, or my discretionary budget. And I had a lot more time on my hands because I wasn't getting together with people and doing a lot of social things. So I went ahead to do the certification in order to just actually be able to self-coach myself better. And I had heard other people who did the certification program and just found it transformational, because obviously as part of learning to be a coach, you peer coach. And so you get coached a lot and you also coach a lot. And so you really learn how to coach yourself as well as coach others. But I really just found I loved coaching. In a way, I think physicians are attracted to coaching because it gives, what we are looking for in that doctor-patient relationship, you really also find in the coach-client relationship. And you can really develop very deep bonds that way and really help people. And I think, the idea of helping people is kind of underlying for, most people who go to medical school.
As a doctor, I wasn't used to asking for help, especially when it came to subjects outside of medicine. But then I found physiciancoaches.com. In an instant, I found hundreds of experts to help me in all aspects of life. On areas I was afraid to ask: dealing with burnout, starting a side gig, money management, even help with my marriage. And the best part? Nearly all experts are physicians themselves. After reading their profile and a quick chat, I knew I found the right mentor for me. At physiciancoaches.com, help from professional colleagues is just a click away.
Now, I got to know you a little bit when we went to Phoenix, and from what I understand, you came from a pretty academic background, straight into sciences, and there are a lot of doctors who come from that. They're going straight from pre-med to med school, straight into residency, and let's face it, they view coaching as kind of like woo-woo, or way in opposite direction of what we learn as doctors. Did you have struggles with that, or was that something you embraced pretty quickly?
It's funny. I, tried reading quote self-help books before, and, the practice of gratitude, and that really never struck a chord with me. I never finished those books. But when I heard about the model that Brooke Castillo, uses, it really just made a lot of sense to me. And when I really kind of broke it down and thought about it, I was like, yeah, that really actually works. And it's essentially a lot of behavioral cognitive therapy that's kind of in that. And it wasn't actually woo-woo to me the way that it was presented. So I didn't have that dissonance with the kind of life coaching the Life Coach School does.
For those who aren't familiar with her teaching, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that. What in particular, in terms of the cognitive behavioral aspects of it, that you could share with us?
Yeah. So there's something we call the model. And basically there are circumstances in the world, and these are things we can't change. And these are actual facts. You can go to a court of law and this would be a fact. And then there's our thoughts about those circumstances. And different people are going to have different thoughts about the same circumstance. It's our thoughts that actually create how we feel about, all the feelings that we have and how we feel about the world. And from those feelings actually is what pushes us to take whatever actions we take. And then that gives us the results that, that we see, that we get. So, you can even take something like 9/11, right? Most Americans would say 9/11 was a terrible tragedy. But if you're the Taliban, 9/11 was a great win. So the circumstance of 9/11, but the thought could be, it was tragic, people died, horrible loss of life, or it could be oh, this was a big win. This, was sticking it to the Americans, just from different views. And depending on how you're thinking about it, that, if you're thinking it's a tragedy, then you might be sad or angry, or, but if you're thinking it's a big win, you're elated. So that really kind of, makes sense. And our brains are really wired, in order to kind of protect us from a primitive standpoint. So basically, in general, we want to seek pleasure, reduce pain, and be as lazy as possible.
So when you were in your peer coaching, how did that help you with your career? You said you suffered burnout. How were you able to help turn that around?
Yeah, so it really actually got me out of my burnout. What I realized is, okay, there are circumstances, but how I'm thinking about these things at the time, everything basically went to a thought that just brought frustration. And I learned that, you can actually change your thoughts, and it does take work to change those thoughts. But, I could actually modify things to be like, okay, well, you know, how can I look at the same situation and make it into something more positive or efficient, or what do I have control over? What can I do for a better outcome? And that really did make a huge difference.
Right, right. So many of us, we do feel powerless, which is often an ingredient for just anxiety and burnout. And if we were able to achieve that power, that's just one thing that we can, empower us to accomplish our goals and our dreams. So you mentioned uh, your job was affected by the pandemic. Did they reduce your hours? How was it affected?
Yeah, so there was a time where we basically kind of shut down, and I only saw patients once or twice a week, and it was really just the patients that were deemed, urgent to see. And luckily, because I was on 24/7 call, I was technically working all the time, so I didn't get furloughed or have to use up my vacation and sick time, which other people did have to use up. But yeah, there were a few months where it was really reduced time at work, and then eventually the clinics did reopen. And it's at some point there was just actually a flood of patients because of all the backlog from patients not being seen for some time.
So what is that when you made your decision to, now you're getting busy again? Most of us would just kind of go back to what we were doing. You decided to explore coaching. Um, how are you able to do that?
So I decided, after actually getting better and getting out of burnout, that I did not want to stay at that hospital. I decided that in doing the certification program, it's 6 months of actual coaching training, and then 6 months of kind of additional training, either in entrepreneurship or more coach training, depending on what you do. And at some point, I basically got to the point where it's like, um, so to back up a little bit, I had started thinking about, even before the pandemic hit, leaving the hospital and starting my own private practice.
Mm.
But in doing the coaching and really enjoying the coaching, and then also just thinking about the pandemic, and then thinking about how much regulation there is in medicine, I basically thought, I think I'd rather start a coaching business than start my own private practice, just in terms of, like, with the coaching business, there is total location freedom. When you start a private practice, now you're building a practice just in that area, and now you're, still restricted to the location that you start your practice in. The overhead, obviously, for coaching, way less than having to get a brick and mortar lease and, equipment and staff and, all that from the get-go. So yeah, that I didn't want to leave medicine, and starting a coaching business was also something I thought I can do kind of part-time, while if I go to working as a physician part-time. Whereas if I start my own private practice, that's kind of a full-time thing to start. But then in the beginning, you don't necessarily have a full load of patients, and but you have a lot of expenditures that you're putting out. And, it's a lot of work to get patients in the beginning, and it can take quite some time to actually become established. So basically, I already had that entrepreneur spirit. My father's actually a business professor, and my mom was an entrepreneur. She at one point had started her own computer business. So, I that wasn't a foreign concept to me of starting a business. And I've actually been investing in real estate since 2008. And the way you invest in real estate is, like, you really need to think of your real estate investments as a business as well if you're going to be successful at it.
Yeah, so let's talk about it, because you're not only a life coach, you're also a wealth coach, or a money coach. So talk about how did that shift? You mentioned you did real estate, over a decade ago. Tell us about your financial journey as well.
Yeah, so I kind of always loved money, even as a kid, and I really credit my parents for kind of teaching good money habits of understanding the value of money, understanding where money comes from. as a kid, I did do like kind of side jobs in order to earn money, babysitting. I actually taught people how to use their computers and made $15 an hour at that, which back then was actually pretty good money. But I would say I was still kind of in that self-employed mindset as opposed to a business owner mindset, as a kid. And, at some point so I did a MD PhD program, which is 8 years. And, in retrospect, I realized that during grad school, I was kind of burning out too. So because the MD PhD program is on average 8 years, and I did it in Cleveland, Ohio, which has relatively low cost of living for housing, a lot of MD PhD students actually do purchase their own home. And so I ended up purchasing the house from my parents, actually, because my father took a new job. And so he had moved out, and my parents were actually getting ready to sell the house when I moved back to Cleveland to go to med school at Case Western Reserve University. And so I started kind of just reading about personal finance in order to like get the mortgage and understand all that, and just really getting fascinated in it, reading more and more, reading about investing, start following the Motley Fool. I started investing in stocks and individual stocks picking. I never did like options or like day trading, but, actually like reading business reports. And at some point I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which then got me interested in real estate. And then by that point I was in grad school and not really a happy grad student. So I started thinking about investing in real estate in order to, try to get to financial freedom as soon as possible. So I was thinking that even before, becoming a physician and actually graduating med school. And so I, started going to the local real estate investment groups. I actually purchased real estate courses, and I flipped 2 houses. Got to know like a lot of other people did some. I had a friend that we kind of partnered on some deals together. So yeah, I really started the real estate investing as a grad student.
So you said your first property was for your parents?
So I bought the house I grew up in from my parents. That's what we ended up doing.
And so were your parents your tenants? Were you charging rent?
No, so that was our primary residence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my parents, so my father had already moved to California for his new job, and my mom was getting ready to sell the house. And then we were, so I got to move home for a little bit, and live rent free for a little while. And then we started looking to buy a place, since we knew we were going to be there for at least 8 years. And, as we were looking around, then I started discussing with my parents, well, could we work something out so we could just buy the home? It would make it so that they didn't have to go through the hassle of actually putting the house on the market, and we get to stay in the house. And so that was, I wouldn't consider that being an investment. I mean, your primary home is a place to live, but really it's still a liability, right? Like it costs you money every month and doesn't bring in any money or cash flow. But that was at least the impetus to start really reading about personal finance, just getting the mortgage and, understanding we actually ended up getting a 7-1 ARM. So just understanding the different kind of mortgages, like, when, how they all work, what the LIBOR index was, like all that was like brand new to me back then.
Yeah, it's learning like another nomenclature as we do in medicine. You have to understand all of those different terms. So you started to do flipping. You started to do some rehab, sounds like some flipping. And then did you tell us about your real estate portfolio now? Did you increase it, or were you just continuing to flip, or what's it made of now?
Yeah. So when I started buying, it was, so the flips I did, I bought foreclosed houses. So bank owned foreclosures, fixed them up, sold them, did it again. And then I said it with a partner, we actually bought some houses, and those were rentals. And so I helped her find them and manage them. When I went back to med school, I actually found that I really did enjoy ophthalmology. And so I, did do residency and fellowship, and I did move to Chicago for residency and then Milwaukee for fellowship. So at that point, I wasn't doing any real estate investing, just because now I'm in a different market, and, you're pretty busy as a resident fellow, and Chicago is kind of a whole different price range than Cleveland. So, but I always had in the back of my mind, I would get back into it. In fact, there was a part of me that just thought like all doctors invested in real estate because like all wealthy people invest in real estate. Like that was the way to build wealth. Like, I don't know if that was just from reading Rich Dad Poor Dad that kind of gave me that thought, but yeah, like, because I didn't really know a lot of doctors. There aren't, many doctors in my family. I only have like one cousin who's a doctor, but that's really it. And she actually doesn't invest in real estate. So I don't know why I thought all doctors invest in real estate. But my first job was out in Virginia, and I did actually start looking into real estate investing there. But, learning that market was like completely different. And so when that job didn't work out, returning Cleveland was one of the reasons. Was actually like, well, I knew the market in Cleveland, I know the different areas, and I really want to get back into the real estate investing. And, I have, some contacts who are likely still around in Cleveland. And then also was, kind of returning home. I had made friends during the MD PhD years that are still in Cleveland. And it's a little hard to make friends when you're an adult. So a lot of things that were kind of driving us to come back to Cleveland. And so that's where I am now. And so this is, so I do real estate invest in Cleveland. I have long-term rentals in Cleveland. And I have a short-term rental in the Hocking Hills area, which is in Ohio, about 2.5 hours away.
And do you have like a game plan? You do some say, I'm going to get one a year, 2 properties a year. Is there any, do you have any goals for that, or you just kind of see like what opportunities are out there for you?
I think looking at different opportunities, looking at ways to diversify. So I also invest in syndications as well.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about your syndications for those who may not know. We've done a program, we've had a few people talk about syndications, but for those who don't know, can you tell us about syndications?
Yeah, so syndications is when you've got essentially a real estate investment. So if you think about like a large apartment complex, like a 300 unit apartment complex, typically you don't have just like one person owning that. It takes a lot of capital in order to do that. So you typically have what's called a sponsor who, finds the deal and then needs to get some investors to work together in order to, have the down payment and potentially money to rehab or fix up the property in order to buy the 300 unit apartment complex. So that's, what becomes the syndication. So when you invest in the syndication, basically you're investing in the company that's buying whatever real estate, this large real estate property. So it might not be just an apartment complex, like, big commercial buildings or self storage, or a development, like, building a whole bunch of, townhouses or, any big development projects. So these can all be syndication projects. And basically you as an investor are investing, with the sponsor who's leading the deal. And then, when you can, depending on the syndication, you may have cash flow that comes back to you, paid out through the time that you're involved in the syndication. And at some point, they're going to sell the property or refinance, and you're going to, kind of get back your initial investment and hopefully a good return as well.
So you decided to teach about money mindset or a money coach. Can you tell us about what exactly is a wealth coach or a mind coach or a money coach? And why should someone go out and seek these type of coaches?
Yeah. So a lot of times, physicians are smart, right? Like it's hard to get into medical school and, we do amazing things as physicians, but a lot of physicians really don't, we don't learn anything about finance in any part of our education, right? Like, not in high school, not in college, not in medical school, not in residency. And as we kind of alluded to earlier, finances have its own jargon, its own language. And so it can be really difficult to kind of understand. And, a lot of times people will start, talking to, someone who knows about finances or like a financial advisor, and they'll use all these terms. And we as physicians don't like to actually quote look dumb. And so sometimes we'll just like kind of agree and think like, okay. And we also, as physicians think, okay, like we're the expert of, our specialty. So now I'm going to go to an expert of finances and they're going to, do right for me and do, what should be done. But the reality of the situation is that most financial advisors are not truly what's called fiduciary and doing what's best for you. Most financial advisors are really glorified salesmen of financial products. And a lot of times those are not financial products that are actually good for you. They're ones that pay a really nice commission to the financial advisor. And I'm not saying that, financial advisors are necessarily evil. And some of them really believe these products are really helpful. And there are situations where the products are helpful, but I think a lot of times they get sold more to people who it's really not that helpful. And really, I think most physicians would do a lot better managing their money themselves than leaving it to, a financial advisor. Or if you are going to use a financial advisor, get one that's fee only, get a plan, and then you really execute it. And a lot of physicians feel like, well, I don't have the time for that. I don't have the time to learn that. And it really doesn't take that much time or effort to make a huge difference on your wealth and your ability to really build wealth. And so working on that money mindset, I think is really important to understand, any physician is smart enough to learn enough about their finances, to manage their money, to really build wealth. I mean, even generational wealth, so that their kids and their grandkids are successful, going to retain that wealth that is built.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a first example. When I graduated residency, I was given two financial advisors. One was someone that, the guy ahead of me used, and he seemed more interested in selling his particular product than actually helping me. And the other one was really, it was a disguised network marketing opportunity. So I didn't get the best financial. And, you talk a lot, especially on your website, going through it, about the mindset. And I think for many of us too, who are physicians, and especially now, I know how it was for me, was, usually we have a lot of loans. And when we're in medical school, I remember medical and residency, we sign paperwork. We don't know exactly what we're signing, but we know that, somewhere down the line, we're going to have to pay this off. And we kind of keep pushing it away and pushing it away. And I think too, it wasn't until I actually wrote down what I owed, and circled that number and made that a target to actually confront it. For me, that's what helped me. And I think, there's a book out I'm reading right now called The Psychology of Money, and it's almost all mindset. It's almost on mindset. And I think when I work with doctors who have issues with money, is they feel like they can, I work with a lot of practice owners. They feel like, well, I hired this person and they can deal with it. And when I'm actually understanding, when I find out why their practice isn't doing well, is because they're not willing to confront it. Is that some of the things that you try to do as a money coach?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of times people, they don't want to look at their finances. They just, see that they've got money coming in and they spend the money, and, there's at least enough money in their bank account to actually pay for whatever they spend, but they're not necessarily thinking long-term. They're not necessarily thinking about their investments and how to grow their wealth and what's the best way to do that, so that, eventually everyone wants to retire. I mean, you may not want to retire early, but lifespans are becoming longer and longer, and you probably don't want to be working when you're 100. And if you're a surgeon, you probably can't really be safely operating when you're 100, right?
Right. I mean, they have pilots who have, they have to retire, I think, at 58, but for medicine, hey, you can keep going. Right. So I never did understand that. So talk about some of the things that you talk about as a money coach, how you help your doctor clients.
Yeah, so a lot of it with investing is overcoming fear, especially people who want to get into real estate investing. If you look at how many people will take a real estate investing course, but then, a lot of them never even get through the course, or if they do get through the course, they never buy that first property, right? And, once you kind of get over the hurdle of the first property, and, there's always going to be some quote failures, some place where you kind of lose some money or things weren't optimal. But the more you learn, the easier it becomes to just keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my thing is somebody has figured it out, and, I don't think you can be, if you want to do well, you want to be the best surgeon, you need to follow and shadow and work under surgeons. So if you want to study financial success, is to find out people who are already successful in what they're doing. And I think you know, it's funny because when we talk about mindset, that's usually what the part is. Well, I'm not really interested in that. I want to know about this hot new stock or this hot new cryptocurrency that everybody wants to buy, and that's going to solve my issues. No, it's having to deal with the mindset if that crashes or it goes down, and really understanding what your risk tolerance is. And as doctors, we're pretty much risk averse. I mean, it's part of what we do, right? But the thing that's important, for us to maintain, it's so surprising that many aren't willing to look it directly in the eye and feel and say, this is what I need to work on. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah. So certainly, I mean, you talk about cryptocurrency or even the stock market. I mean, there are fluctuations, there are ups and downs. And yes, the stock market has been, doing amazingly for the last few years. But as we've seen recently, what goes up will come down. And that's just a natural part of the stock market. But you've got to, when you think about it, is you want to buy things when they're on sale, right? Like you don't want to pay top dollar. Like we understand this when we go buy material items, but when it comes to stocks, like just because the stock price is down doesn't mean the intrinsic workings of the companies that represent that stock are actually down, right? There's always going to be some kind of like perceived value and fluff, and then there's the value of the company itself. And so if you can actually buy when stocks are going down, then, when it goes back up and grows again, like that's when you're really going to, grow some more wealth. Cryptocurrency, lots of up and down. And so if you can't stomach the ups and downs and you end up selling low and then it blows up, then you essentially will never create wealth that way.
Now, I want to talk to you too, and I know, and again, appreciate your time here. I'm curious about your stocks investing. Many of us say, we should invest in what we know. Is that a philosophy that you do? Do you invest in stocks that you do, or do you do a lot of speculation play?
So for stocks, I mostly invest just in index funds. I do have some individual stocks that I still own from back when I first started learning about investing and was reading, a lot of the Motley Fool and actually reading like business statements. So I've just kind of held on to some of those stocks. One of them being like Starbucks, which has significantly grown since I bought it in like 2005.
Yeah, I invest in that company every day almost.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they sell a legal addictive substance, right?
Yes. So I think it really depends on, where you are in your journey. For me, I'm like, I've got some conservative stuff. I've got my index funds. I've got those that like I don't even look at them. I look at them like once a year. And then I've got my, individual stocks. I tend to do more, I tend to do stocks that are things that I believe in. I have a Tesla, so I support Tesla. I have Apple. I'm in the Apple ecosystem. I have AT&T. I like the dividends from that. And then I just have, a small portion. I did a talk on cryptocurrency, but that's a very small portion of what my net worth is. And, I see too many doctors who kind of want to do like what's the newest and hottest thing. And I think you're just going to get wrecked after a while, unless you can tolerate those that volatility. Sure, one cryptocurrency might go to the moon. It might be the next, Ethereum, Shiba Inu, whatever it is. But for every Shiba Inus, there's like 99 other coins that, that can wreck you. So, but it has to do, with the mindset. Can you, how do you react to when those things go down? And like you said, they often will go down. Even real estate, right? We all know that real estate's on a high, but we also know too that things can level off, and you may not get the returns that you've had before. So, what are some tactics that you help your clients with in their mindset and how to approach this?
I think one really important thing when working with my clients about, investing and where they want to go is really talking about their why. And if they have a really strong why, that can pull them through the hard times. So especially if they're interested in doing something like real estate investing, which while it's considered passive, it's really, if you're doing direct ownership of real estate, it is nothing but passive in the beginning. It is definitely a lot of work, especially right now. The market has been really hot. So even finding deals, it may just take offer after offer after offer. And sometimes you just kind of like want to bite and just like, go for something and get it. But, you make your money when you buy. And if you buy too high, like it's possible to salvage that with, time and appreciation, but you really want to be smart when you buy the property and do your due diligence. And, there's a lot of upfront cost to that, right? You're paying for inspectors, you're paying for other, expert opinions to come in. You've got to look up all the regulations of the city that you're investing in, and those regulations can change, right? The city can pass a new ordinance, which could, really cut into your cash flow, and you have to kind of be prepared for that. And that's why you got to make sure that, any property you buy is positive cash flow, and that you're not just banking on appreciation. Because yes, while real estate appreciates over time, and it's been appreciating a lot recently, back in 2008, there was a time where real estate really didn't appreciate. So that primary residence I bought, I bought my home from my parents. So we bought that in 2003. And when we sold in 2016, it basically was essentially the same value, because the value had dropped in 2008, and, basically took till 2016 to kind of level out. And then now, so 2016 is when I went to Virginia. I came back in 2019. And sadly, in those 3 years, that's when all the appreciation happened.
Right. So. Yeah, it tends to happen that way too. You never know. But on the other hand, too, you might experience some like really big, numbers, just because you are more active, you are taking more of a risk than, let's say, perhaps a syndication. You could argue whether or not that is, but there's always a give and take, right? So it really comes down to where you are and what you're willing to just kind of, for lack of a better term, stomach, or what you're able to do. But for the most part, I think, the best thing to do is the best thing not to do is just to do nothing. Because I think we all learned that, one of the most scariest things that I believe in is just having one job, one income. And I think you would agree with that as well.
Yeah, and definitely.
That's for me, that's the most scariest thing. And we've seen that.
Because if you think about it, people feel like, oh, my physician job is secure. But, if you lose your physician job, like it can take quite a while to get a new one, and you may have to move for that. And maybe you're not in a position to easily move, right? Like your spouse has a job, your kids are in school, your family's nearby. But you may have a non-compete, and now you've got to drive like an hour or 2 hours away to work somewhere else.
Yeah, you never know what can happen. You never know what can happen. I learned from a hand surgeon who, it was during my rotation, and one night after call, he put his hand under his bed, and he ended up having a permanent nerve palsy, and he could not operate again. Don't know if he had, some type of insurance, disability insurance, but you never know what could happen, right? We could walk down the street, we could be in an accident. So, there's always things and that can happen. And, we really, don't want to get kind of metaphysical on this, but, we only got one time that we're on this earth. We want to make the best of it. How are we going to do it? I think it's through, and I think you agree, through multiple streams of income. Start looking at different avenues and realize, that, there are no assurances in life.
Yeah. And even tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Elisa, this has been wonderful. If somebody wanted to find more information about what you do, maybe search for your coaching services, where can they go?
So probably the best place to go is my website, which is growyourwealthymindset.com. There are links to all my other social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I have a YouTube channel, and I often do webinars and even free coaching sessions. So take a look for that.
Take a look at that. Thank you, Elisa. It was very illuminating. Thank you for everything that you do, and keep helping more doctors out there, because we definitely need it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. And as always, guys, don't stay stagnant. If you only have one income, one job, start thinking about it. There's other sources. It's investing, could be real estate, it could be the stock market, whatever you do, you need to start thinking about these things. The worst thing you can do is not do anything. As always, keep moving forward. This podcast episode is sponsored by Yield Nodes. If you're looking to get into cryptocurrency, but you're scared away by all the volatility, first, I don't blame you. Recently, I discovered a passive income opportunity, which is known as Yield Nodes, which is a profit sharing program where they are investing in creating nodes, creating servers that can help the blockchain. My returns average about 8 to 10% per month. I'm not a financial advisor. You should do what you feel is important for your money, but if you want to check this out, go to bootstrapmd.com/go/yieldnodes, and I think you'll be really excited about the opportunities that are possible through cryptocurrency.